Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 20 of the Future of Work show. For those of you who've been following our journey, we've been having conversations around the future of work since June, a few times a month. And we've covered topics as diverse as innovation, robotics, the human robotic interface, marketing, AI, analytics. And we've invited for these conversations leading academics and practitioners from all over the world. And we've been extremely fortunate to have some amazing people join us for this series. Uh, this month, the spotlight is on the human resource function, a function that I myself represent. And today's conversation is the third in the series. We started off with a conversation with Krish Shankar, who, of course, as you know, is the Group HR head of Infosys, speak about the future of human resources. And then we had a conversation, in fact, earlier this week with Professor Anna Tavis on the performance management revolution. Today, I have with us a very, very special guest, the CHRO of Diageo India. And we're going to speak about another topic that is going to have huge implications on the way organizations and the human resource function operate over the next few years, the personalization of employee experience. So we're going to explore what that means, what its implications are, how easy or how challenging some of that is actually going to be in practice. For those of you who are joining me for the very first time, I am Shalini, and I work at the intersection of people and organizations and the future of work as both an advisor and an educator, along with my partners in this exercise. And one of the things we focused on is how do we create conversations around the future so that professionals who are already working at the top of their field sometimes can think about the new mindset, skills, and attitudes that are going to be needed to navigate a future that looks very, very different from anything we've seen in the past. So, now with that, let's speak about what the personalization of employee experience is going to look like. And let me get on my guest, Arif. Hi,
Hi,
Arif.
good morning,
Thank you
Shalini,
so
and
much.
good morning, everyone.
Hi, Arif. Good morning. And thank you so much for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it. Now, Arif is CHRO Diageo India. And before joining Diageo, he's had a long, some might say, a veteran career at GE across many parts of the world. And of course, now he's joined in his role as CHRO Diageo India from last year.
That's correct, January 2019, so almost 2 years.
Fantastic. And what a year 2020 has been.
Amazing, yeah. We all have learned so much, Shalini.
So much, right? So actually that's one of the places I wanted to start off with. What got you interested in some of these topics around the future of work, and what got you interested in the topic of personalization in the first place?
Shalini, it's an interesting topic because the world around us has changed significantly. And I remember, and it's not a sudden realization, but as I look at how we interact as consumers, you look at Amazon, you look at Myntra, so many platforms we have today. Um, we are treated differently. And when these marketplaces got created, they realized that they really need to find how we can treat each and every customer differently, give them a unique experience. And as we give them a unique experience, they will realize the power of the platform and will navigate and become a loyal customer. And we all go through that experience. As in, I remember the number of times I'm on a news site and an ad pops up from Amazon because I had navigated and looked at products at that kind. So it's that unique experience which we are going through in the world because of the change in the way all of us interact as consumers, as people who are connecting and interacting very differently. The other thing, which is more of a story, I will share with you because that's something which is one of my favorites, although it happened 10 years back. I was working in a consumer business, appliances specifically. And I remember a conversation where some of us in the leadership team were interacting with one of the leading consulting firms. And the idea was for us to really create a charter for ourselves as to what we will be in future. One of the first questions they asked is, who is your customer? And this is like a global leadership team. All of us are proud. We say we know the market, we understand what it is. And we said, yeah, a customer, appliances. So customers are people who are buying appliances, so which basically means families, family units. They said no. So we said it's the builders who are building, and constructing, because they take appliances and buy. And the answer was no. uh, as we all are management graduates, we went into further classification, right? SEC, A, B, C, and that kind of detailed conversation. And I still remember the frustration which the leading partner who was working with us had, and basically said, I'm going to close the day. Please go and figure out and get the answer. Who's your customer? If you can't even answer that, forget about the strategy. And we all did everything possible, right? So we were in America, so go to Best Buy, one of the leading chains, look at Home Depot, interact with people, try to get all the answers in terms of what would we really say about customers. And we thought this doesn't know what he or she is saying, because we have been in this business. We know who are the people who are buying our products. We came back again, detailed presentation analysis with lots of data on classification of people who buy our products and so on. And the guy just completely did not relate to what we had to share. And then came a moment of reflection, and he said, let me share some data with you guys. And as that data came, it was just one simple page, which basically said, across the world, irrespective of the markets you are in, uh, 87% of decisions related to buying of appliances are actually taken by women. Your biggest customers are women. And guess what? Um, just go back and relate to how many women are designing your products. And we looked at our engineering and design teams, and guess what? The number was in single digits. So we as a company were designing the biggest appliances, which were very reliable, which worked beautifully, but they looked either white or gray. Some of our competition was designing appliances which had all kinds of colors, tremendous user experience and ability to navigate and interact with appliances with technology and all that coming in. And they were doing very well in the marketplace. And I remember that takeaway, which basically said that, how customer experience or how we interact is changing the way, we look at ourselves, the way we do business. Interestingly, that thought, when I reflect back and look at where we are today, people are people. If people behave differently as customers and behave differently in the external market and how they buy products, how they interact with different platforms, they would behave differently at work as well. And unfortunately, for a lot of us as organizations, we have not really focused on employee experience in the true sense of the word. For us, employees are part of an organization, and employees are employees, while customers are people. So I think it's this outlook and realization that people are people. The world around us has changed significantly. And we got to look at our employees as people who would interact and connect in a very different way than what was in the past. Which kind of got me interested that how do we really unfold this opportunity and do things differently.
That's so interesting, Arif. And the conversation around personalization of employee experience is actually a fairly recent one. I think it's only in the last 4 years, more specifically, that we've started hearing conversations around this, and perhaps in the last 2 years that it's sort of suddenly picked up momentum as more and more people are exploring the implications of something like this. What would you say are some of the driving forces for the very idea, personalization of employee experience to become so central to what might be a possible future for both the human resource function, but also the way organizations more generally are set up?
So maybe three, four themes, Shalini. The first one, and I think while we all kind of subconsciously realize it, we believe, but we don't really bring that into practice, is realizing the fact that employee experience has a tremendous impact on customer experience. And output the companies have, because it's the people who are translating that experience. Uh, and while there's a lot of research, I remember looking at a Gallup research which said, companies who focus a lot on creating a powerful employee experience and have employees who are engaged have 147% stronger chances of performing better than their competition, and so on. So the connection between employee experience and customer experience kind of related. Success of the business is known, but it's more subconscious. The other thing which I think is important is realizing that employee experience is most of the times misunderstood to be related to technology. Technology is a strong enabler, and it is something which really helps you to deliver that experience and connection strongly. But it's a mindset. Unless we think differently about our employees and really treat them as unique, each and every person brings a different level of value. I think there is no way we can translate success for the business. So it's realizing that employee experience is enabled by technology, but it's about a mindset change, which really can enable success for the business. Third thing, which I think is connected, is realizing that most of the times, as we are solving for employee problems, solving for employees to be successful, we end up looking at employees with a lens of function they are in, job they are working in, the title they carry, and so on, and unable to relate to employee needs. And how do we solve for employee needs? Because an experience is based on what needs an employee has, what desires an employee carries, and how to really make that happen or fulfill that in the organization. And if one can create a path for that, one can really create successful business. And the only way one can create a path for that is by realizing that employees are unique, thinking using a different lens, a mindset to look at employees, to enable success for them, and which will impact business results.
No, it's so interesting you say that, Arif, because the very first time I came across, this whole idea of employee experience becoming so central was from a professor of design thinking, Professor Vijay Ghai, and he was also on this show very, very early on. And I remember, and this was probably maybe 2016, 2017, and he spoke about, and this was one of those coffee meets and chats about big ideas for the future. And he spoke about at that time, his frustration that while organizations were beginning to appreciate how design thinking could be used for the customer experience, and they had sort of moved away from, like you spoke about, the segmentation approach to go much deeper and collect, far richer, more qualitative, but much, much sharper understanding of how their products are being used. He hadn't as yet seen a similar shift happen in terms of, turning the lens inwards and looking at employee experience. And then a couple of years later, I had, again, two professors of innovation and design thinking say exactly the same thing, that, that's where this is all headed. And, it's like it's the same tool. The lens, you can apply it to the outside world, customers, you can apply it to the inside world, employees, and your outcomes turn out to be very, very different. It's all about a much richer, deeper understanding, which goes beyond broad bucketing people into categories, but looking at, an individual, what is their experience. But tell me something. Some people might argue that this is like old wine in a new bottle. We had, back in the day, there was job satisfaction, then what was it? Employee engagement, and, perhaps the conversation around employee experience is more or less the same thing. Do you think that's the case, or do you think there are fundamental differences?
There are fundamental differences, Shalini. And let me just probably share a few experiences or stories on how I realized that there is a fundamental difference in how we look at things. So the first one, actually, I started, as I said, in Diageo January of 2019, and I remember one of the first things which I thought I should do in my role as HR leader for the company is just to get to know the business. and travel across. I love traveling, so it was
Mm.
nice to be able to travel across India, and we have our manufacturing plants in the length and breadth of the country and sales team spread out. So first 6 months I was traveling quite a bit, and I traveled in all interesting places where we have strong operations. One of the strongest voices I heard from employees as I traveled, and it's a very small, minor thing, but I realized how simple things can become huge issues or could actually solve big problems as well. Was that Arif, our travel policy is not good. And consistently across different locations, people had complaints on how it is not an enabler, how it is a big bottleneck in terms of experience of people. People talked about the fact that they travel left, right, and center. There were issues around platform, there were issues around what policy offered as guidelines, and so on. When I came back and talked to my team and the team which owned a travel policy, and they actually shared with me limitations that are if we have limitations of cost, we have limitations of the fact that we need to have approved hotels because employee health and safety is important, so we need to have those guidelines, and we also have limitations on what benefits we can offer, cannot offer, because we have to align with the global guidelines and so on. And the fundamental challenge which I navigated as I looked at the document, as in what employees said, made sense because that's how they felt and that's how the entire experience was for them. What my team said also made sense because they were looking at balancing cost, health and safety guidelines, global connection, and so on. So how do we resolve for this conflict? I remember first month or two, I thought maybe it's just a noise and it'll settle down. But the more I traveled, the more I heard about it. Um, as I was navigating that, my journey, my initial few months, I thought, why not we just form a group of people, which should be employees because they go through the experience and the people who have the biggest, who are facing the biggest pain, and kind of come together with the team which owns the policy to really craft something and co-create a travel policy. We did that. We actually put a team of people with employees being there and the team which owned the policy to co-create and come up with a draft. If I look at the initial policy we had versus what we have today, the difference is probably 25%, not significantly different. But the outlook towards the experience completely changed in terms of what that policy offered. There was a lot more empowerment, while there were guidelines, but there was a lot more trust, empowerment, and flexibility. And I think that completely changed the game from that being the biggest complaint that became a aha for employees. So my aha moment in that experience was that when you are really, I want to touch on what you said. Design thinking talks about working with the customers, going deep and really having a sense of empathy versus taking their needs and saying I'm solving for these needs. I think empathy comes when you are involved, you understand and appreciate, and you actually co-share the solution versus thinking that I'm at a higher plane and I'm going to make the policy guidelines because I sit in HO, and guess what, employees need to follow. So I think it's a significant aha and realization for me personally and for all of us, that if you're really looking at employees of the future for whom it's about partnership. What they are looking for is a higher level of engagement and meaning engagement in the organizations. The way we translate HR practices or HR solutions or the way the organizations operate has to fundamentally change. It has to change to partnership. I'll share one more story and then probably we'll take the conversation from there. As we started this entire lockdown, and this is first few weeks of our lockdown in Diageo, uh, as most of the companies, we were in a state of shock because we were dealing with that, right? Unprecedented situation. You suddenly, from running the business across the country, everything is shut down. Can't even get out of your house, and significant limitations. One of our teams said that there is a significant challenge in terms of availability of sanitizers in the marketplace, and healthcare workers or people who are really trying to deal with this pandemic are struggling. One of our inputs in the products we make is actually ethyl neutral alcohol, which is also an ingredient in sanitizer. Why don't we really go and make some sanitizer and give it to healthcare workers and really help the system cope up with this significant unprecedented crisis? I must say our first reaction was, oh, really? Yes, this is a need, but guess what? We'll have to completely change our manufacturing setup.
Mhm.
We'll have to rewire how we operate. We said, how will we do it? And then once this is done, when we restart making our own products, alcohols, how will we completely make those changes? How will we take care of quality standards? Because you can't make a product from a company of Diageo's reputation, which is below quality standards. How? And lots of questions. The immediate reaction from the team, which I can tell you was a big learning for me personally, was we say our purpose is celebration of life and celebration of life as a
Mhm.
whole, which means that we actually, it's not just about fun, it's about the difference we make to communities and the markets and environments we are operating in. If you empower us, we will make this purpose come alive, and we will do everything which is needed from a quality requirement, company process requirement, but at the same time we'll address the need. We let go. We empowered the team, a cross-functional team, and it was so uplifting, Shalini, that within 5 days, 5 days of we empowering the team came up with the first bottle of sanitizer, which was ready to go out of the factory, meeting all requirements of compliance, law,
Mhm.
quality standards, process rigor, and ability to unwind or rewind our operations the way it had to be done. So what I'm saying is, one is it's about co-creation, working with people, but secondly, I think we have very smart people. The era or time of treating employees as employees and I'm going to tell them what to do and they will do it is gone. People are a lot more committed. They want to make a difference, not only to their careers and organization, but to the world around them. And if we treat our employees as people, we can really make a huge difference in the world we live in.
This is such an inspiring story, Arif. I mean, this is the second time I'm hearing it, but it's really inspiring because I do remember that all those months ago when I came across the story for the very first time, uh, I mean, it was amazing how much can happen when you create the space for a committed set of individuals to find answers to what does sound pretty complex, right? Turning
Yeah.
around your operations from making the alcohol that you're so well known for to sanitizers. But the fact that it was done by a team within 5 days, it was super, super inspiring. So let me ask you then, do you think in this whole conversation around employee experience, um, some of the mindset shifts underlying this shift are about a certain amount of co-creation of experiences that are important to them by people who are part of that process, which is different from perhaps a much more common best practice orientation that human resources has often had, where we've looked at, okay, what are the top 10 companies, and you work for GE. Everyone in the world, I think, copies GE HR practices, whether or not they make sense in their particular context. So are you seeing that, or do you expect that there's going to be a shift from that orientation of best practice benchmarking that HR has thrived on for at least 3 decades, to a more, okay, what's our specific context and how do we design an experience that makes sense for our employees by making them part of the process?
Completely, Shalini. And I think that's a significant mindset shift we need in the HR function. Um, I'll share another few examples, right?
Mm.
So I remember being part of a team which designed career paths, technical career paths, and very well established career paths. You've got to
Mm.
be an expert. If you do XYZ, you'll reach this level, and then you need to build XYZ skills, you need to get exposed to these kind of opportunities, and you continue to grow. As we look at the world around us, as in I remember we just last week we had this conversation on careers, and I think we are thrown new challenges every now and then. We suddenly realize that we are operating in certain markets and not operating in certain markets. Products and solutions which are relevant today may not stay relevant tomorrow. Technologies which are working today may have no relevance tomorrow or may not be even impactful. With the speed of change and the dynamism we are in, I don't think so. We can have career paths which can be a function of X, Y, Z competencies, because those competencies may not stay relevant in future. Now, if that's the context, what becomes important is how do we really enable learning for our employees, and learning which is more customized, because that learning and an opportunity to get that skill or build that capability excites the person, and there is a sense of ownership which the person has. What is important is how do you create journeys and experiences so that people build a set of diverse skill but also become strong at doing something. What is becoming important is how do we provide coaching and support for our teams to really continue to not just build skills, but also to have a sounding board. As in last three career coaching conversations I have had with people, I have not given a single advice because they did not need an advice. What they need was a person who could, with them, be a maybe asking them questions, helping them get to a path versus telling them what to do. So with that significant shift of what's happening in the external one, with the speed of change, dynamism, it is impacting the systems, processes, and interventions we deliver as HR function. Whether it's careers or if we talk about learning, all of them have made relevant to individuals and also have to be translated in a way that there is an ability for us to adapt, flex, change, and also make it continuous in process. For that to happen, it's a lot about partnership. Um, Career is not owned by the organizations, it's the employees. And how do we enable that? Managers are not the ones who are responsible for growth of employees. They are catalysts and enablers. That mindset shift requires a very different way of working. And unless we make employees as people and bring them along the journey, I don't think so we can be successful in the future.
That's so well said, Arif. So well said. I mean, from what you're saying, one of the things that I'm taking away is that key to this focus on employee experience is going to be, of course, a very deep, empathy is an overused word. I almost feel like saying starting off with respect, it has that layer of respect of an understanding, experience along with collaboration or co-creation, so that it isn't so much, one's up here and one's up here, but it's done together, along with certain flexibility in the system and agility in the system to keep coming at it again and making it relevant, because the outside world and the needs of an organization themselves are changing so rapidly. And all of this is it's a new skill set for human resources. It is not one which HR has traditionally focused on. HR has traditionally been far more process driven, system driven, enterprise wide systems, what will work, either best practice based or sometimes working with a consulting company to say, okay, for our industry, this is the right practice. And, then have a change management process at the back of it to roll out, a new system. So it's a fundamental shift in the way HR itself will operate. And I'm going to jump into the question of what personalization will look like. But before I do that, I want to take some of the comments. Hi, Ajruddin, good morning. Atul says, Vix. Indeed, we've all learned so much in 2020, the new way. Oh, absolutely. Anand, greetings to Arif. Absolutely great to have worked with Arif. The future of work remains very relevant post retirement. I'm absolutely sure. I find myself getting assignments which are engaging. Hello, everyone. Hi there. Employee experience is very important, and this is important during this pandemic. People managers have to play a very important role in this process. Rajesh asks, how practical is it to create unique customized experiences for a diverse, heterogeneous, large employee base? What challenges do you envisage? And this actually leads into the next part of our conversation, the personalization. So, we spoke about what does it mean to focus on employee experience. What will it mean to personalize that for an organization which is of a certain size, or even say Diageo in India, which is what would it mean?
So let me share some 3, 4 thoughts, Shalini, and I think these are examples which will help us to come to some stories. So we were struggling with employee onboarding solution, and we are again on that path. It's not that we have created a perfect solution, but one of the challenges we had is diverse workforce, very spread out. We have new employees who join in Alwar, they also join in Udaipur, they also join in Nasik, they also join in Aurangabad, and across the country, right? How do we make sure we give them the same experience of understanding the organization, understanding and connecting with that organization where when they are joining, but also at the same time make it more personal in nature, because so that they have the flexibility. It's not that the only way we can create this experience is by bringing all of them to Bangalore, which is our HQ, and that's when all 100 people come. Guess what? This pandemic told us that you can't do it anymore. So you have to think of newer ways of doing it. One of the solutions the team came up with was, why not we really create an AR solution where we really use how an entire retail outlet works and how a customer interacts with our brands. How do we really address the questions customer has, and how do we engage with the customers there? How does our entire manufacturing plant work? And how do we really start with distillation and really create an end product and take care of quality controls and so on? And while it was a very simple idea, but doing it in a way that it is engaging and it really addresses what we want an employee to understand, also required us to work with employees to build a solution like that. So while technology was a significant enabler, but what really helped us was bringing employees along in creating that journey so that the onboarding is very powerful. So that's the first one. Second, I think personalization, if we start looking at, and it's a great question that, you have a large workforce, how can I create a unique and personal experience for, say, we have 10,000 employees, each and every employee? My view would be we should start with some level of segmentation, which will really help us to create experiences for that segment and make it more unique for them. Our past view of segmentation, as I mentioned earlier, and as I realize, has been function, job title, number of years of experience. Can we start looking at employees based on their needs? So if I'm designing a benefits platform, how a person interact with a simple benefit like medical insurance could be very different for someone who's just starting their careers, to someone who's just started the family way, to someone who's at the later part of their lives. Can we create some segmentation and create opportunities for people to choose benefits which are applicable for them? It's difficult because our system outside is not geared for it, but it's not impossible. How do you really create a benefit plan which works for employees by looking at employees with the lens of what their needs are, versus giving a straight solution? These are the benefits, these are the policies, and take it. So that's the second example I would say. Third, which I think is a very important one, and we learned as in something which I learned and applied, and it worked very well. So we have a view of people based on what they share, what they do and deliver on goals and objectives, plus the interactions we have had. Most of the times we don't realize how these people are operating and working in the larger organization. One of the studies which we did was an organization network analysis, was to really understand my own function. Who's the real healer? Who do people go to when they have something which is troubling them? Uh, who's a real expert? When someone is facing a problem, who do people go to and ask
Mhm.
for help and coaching and advice? When you build that level of understanding of people and talent by using approaches which are different than conventional approaches, the kind of paths one can create, not in just in terms of careers, their own growth, will be fairly unique in nature. And I must say, once we did this study, I did two changes for my own team without naming individuals. Got someone from into a talent role and actually moved someone into a functional support. And if I look at last 1 year, those individuals have completely shined and done extremely well. So, by building a better understanding of talent and understanding the uniqueness of talent, which is beyond our conventional ways of looking at talent, one can create career journeys and career paths which can not just be fulfilling for individuals, but can also be impactful for organizations. So, these three examples, it's very tough. It's not that we have
Mhm.
got a perfect solution, but just some ideas to play with.
So I'm going to take what you just said and just play it forward a little, what might happen over the next few years. So, all of us have gotten accustomed to going on a Netflix channel and finding recommendations that match our needs and are quite different from anyone else, right? Like we are a family of four, and I can tell you that everyone else in my family always makes fun of the the titles that pop up when I log in, because I'm very fond of rom coms, and everyone else in our family is fond of thrillers or very different genres from me. Uh, and obviously, it's not that I, as a customer, would have told Netflix that, okay, listen, this is the kind of person I am. I don't have to tell it, just by my actions and what movies I tend to watch and where I gravitate. Netflix at the back end uses its algorithms to suggest shows that are a match for me, right? So all of us have had that experience. And we've had a similar experience on Amazon. And like I think you mentioned right at the start, that, the ads pop up connected with the kind of stuff you have been searching for. If we go forward a few years, and, Diageo may not be there as yet, maybe there are few organizations there as yet, what would an employee's experience, a deeply personalized experience, what might it look like? And it's a thought experiment, so it's fine if it doesn't exactly play out in the same way.
Yeah. So, a lot of organizations have made a lot of progress, Shalini, and I can tell you something which we did. So today, if I go to my learning platform, based on my history of learning and the areas I have shown interest in, I actually get recommendations on what courses should I go for. So imagine now, this is only one part of it, right? But what you said, in future, if the entire information is connected and systems interact well, and the outlook is to enable that for an employee, depending on areas I have shown interested in my careers, what areas I want to explore, um, opportunities may come to me as recommendations to pursue within the company, which may not necessarily be a job. It could just be an experience to go for. The learning solutions come and give me ideas of what can I go and learn, because that can help me. I may get recommendations of colleagues or co-workers with similar interests with whom I can partner and exchange thoughts and ideas. um, I could be able to decide how my compensation structure should completely work with a lot of independence. Yes, there are limitations of regulatory framework and so on, but lot of independence, whether I want an X benefit or not. I don't really want a medical insurance, but I want to use that money to go and pursue a learning opportunity or do a course, or I want more vacation time, or guess what, I'm a hard worker, I don't want any vacation time, take all my vacations, but give me XYZ. So I think one, integrated, lot more integrated in terms of the entire experience one goes through from onboarding to exit or retirement. lot more integrated in how learning comes an individual's way to enable career and success. Lot more integrated in terms of how I interact and connect with my colleagues. um, Last but not the least, lot more flexibility in how I want to be treated, what I value versus what organization thinks is important.
That sounds fascinating, to be honest. And by the way, I also think we're headed in exactly the same direction, where, because the technology is already there, where without us spelling it out for technology, that we are XYZ kind of person, just by sharing our choices and what we like and what we don't like, and having a kind of feedback loop built in, a technology being able to, in a sense, read our mind. Of course, it's just data speaking, but algorithmically, if you like, read our minds to suggest opportunities that make sense for us, or experiences that are in sync with our values, or learning opportunities that are in tune with where we seem to be headed, seems a possibility. One of the things you spoke about, Arif, some time back, was that this isn't as much about technology, because we know the technology, the capabilities exist. We're seeing that in the customer interface already. But it's about a mindset shift inside organizations. Can you speak to what this mindset shift might actually be?
So you're right, Shalini. The technology exists. It's and it's not been embraced so well because honestly, I think we as HR people have been very conservative or afraid of embracing technology because we have been worried about what would it do to us. Like in a lot of other cases, it happened in the past. Just one story, and then I'll build
Yeah.
into future. So I remember once. In one of my experiences, what we wanted to do is we wanted to understand employees more dynamically. So rather than doing an employee survey once a year and understanding what the employees have to say as a response to a questionnaire, we said, why not we have a chatbot who engages with employees and on a continuous basis. And as the chatbot engages with employees, what one will be able to do is build that connection, understand what the employees are saying, what they are expecting, use that data for our HR team to be more of intervention experts and really seeing how we can use that data to make things happen for employees and partner with managers in doing it. The biggest resistor for that intervention in the organization was the HR function, because
Mhm.
the HR team was very worried about the fact that if a chatbot is going to engage with employees, what will my role be? Where will I play or add value? And I remember going that through that journey with the entire team and really uh, for all of us to realize that this technology was a step for us to be doing a lot more meaningful work. And if this chatbot is able to connect and help us get understanding of red flags, where challenges are, then the job of HR partner changes to just understanding employees to really spending a lot more time on diagnosis, intervention, and really helping solve the cause versus just understanding the problem itself. And I think that's been the biggest challenge. We think, and I'm just going to be slightly provocative, we think HR's role is to build careers. We think our role is that we own culture. We think we lead performance management in organization and we build capabilities. Uh, Guess what? None of that is relevant anymore because all of that will happen based on how an employee is understanding his or her aspirations and moving towards it. I think our role has to change fundamentally. We got to be integrators. When I say integrators, how do we create opportunities, not just for people to connect? It's not about connecting people, it's about helping understand what's the purpose of the organization. What is the individual thinking about his or her own purpose? How do I help and build a connection in that? Because if that connection doesn't happen and an employee doesn't feel being fulfilled in the organization, I don't think so that connection will stay. An employee may not may not want to stay with the company. So how do you really um, bring employee purpose live and make it real for them at the workplace? I think our role is to be instigators. We are no more helping change happen. So it's not about a system getting rolled out and HR is doing the change management. But we got to be the ones who are driving change. We have this perfect vantage point in our roles where we have access to leaders. We understand what they are going through, what's happening, how they want to grow and build capability in the organization. We also have these fundamental tools which can help us understand employees, their aspirations, and so on. We got to be the instigators who are driving change and taking the organization forward versus being resistors of change. I would say the other thing which I have realized more and more, Shalini, the last one, but is a very important one, is that we got to be the healers. And it's not just, I'm not saying we should change our profession and we become, people who are counselors. What I'm saying is, are we engaging and listening to people? Most of the problems get solved by just listening to people. Are we the ones who are helping the stress levels and challenges in the organization which everyone faces settle down and help people manage with that, because no one else is doing it? It's our job to think differently and create an environment where people are able to deal with the stress, deal with the challenges, and are feel that they are listened to. So if we fundamentally rewire and think ourselves not as process experts or people who are translating culture, careers, but think of ourselves as people who are instigators, integrators, and healers, we can fundamentally change in the way how we are operating, and change the way an employee experience becomes real versus being resistors in making that happen.
Now, it's very interesting, Arif. Actually, the role of the kinds of skills that HR is going to need to be really good at are fundamentally shifting. And there is, on the one hand, this whole, at one end, it's the comfort with using technology, with using data for, rolling out some of what we spoke about, the kind of deep personalization of a process, etc. It requires, being able to think at a system level and an individual level simultaneously, and to do that while integrating technology, data, evidence-based management, etc. So there's that very logical, a much higher level of logic and data-driven understanding. At the same time, a much higher level of empathetic understanding at the same time. And most HR professionals have operated somewhere in the middle zone, where there is, some logic, some empathy, but not a great deal of necessarily, not at the highest level of either, but more, process orientation being very strong, system rollout being very strong, and this is really a very big shift in the skills required. And of course, as you also pointed out, underlying that, a much more fundamental shift in our mindsets, what HR actually is, what is the role of HR in an organization. And as technology within HR becomes more and more developed and strong, this is going to be a question which organization after organization is going to ask itself. Because if, say, 10 years back, HR's big function was take care of these 5 processes and make sure that the organization runs with that, that's sort of like not required anymore. Technology can manage that far more adeptly than a person can, an HR person can. So that's a huge shift. I'm going to take read some of the comments. Such an insightful session. Thank you. Thank you. Sounding boards need an ability to not give advice. Absolutely, David. Absolutely. Shalini, empathy and co-creation, new skill set. Well said. Thank you. Is it right that personalize means realign for extenuation, challenging situation, not realigning means you have to leave the company? I Any sense, Arif, what would be your response?
Could you repeat, Shalini? I'm just trying to absorb.
Yeah. Dr. Love Singh asks, is it right that personalize means realign for extenuating, challenging situation? Not realigning means you have to leave the company. So perhaps Dr. Love Singh is asking whether personalization is, something which is going to focus on an extreme sort of challenging situation, or where if you don't personalize, then the person will have to leave the organization. That's how I'm reading this.
Yeah, and if I read it that way, not really, as in, yes, extreme and challenging situations are where things become real, and you can see it right in front of them, like the example I gave for hand sanitizer and so on. But those are probably great moments of reflection for one to realize how things need to change. Guess what? Our biggest learning out of that experience has been how do we make it real and make it happen every day in the organization, right? So I think personalization is a lot about making employee experience unique based on the needs on a day-to-day basis every day versus just do it for crisis or extreme situations.
I would also agree. I think we're going to see it much more broadly, because the moment you start introducing personalization, we've already experienced it as customers, and it's a direction once you start going down, a road you start going down. Uh, Today's technology allows you to personalize it to an n of one, and we're seeing that, and I'm sure we're going to see that play out in organizations. Do you want to take a guess, Arif, where this is going to begin within human resources? So I know you said one of the examples you gave where perhaps it already exists today is actually two examples you gave where it exists today in many organizations. Is one, L&D recommendations, where if you took course ABC, then maybe you should take course DEF. So we've seen that perhaps play across many different kinds of LMS systems. We've also perhaps seen the kind of personalization you spoke about of benefits, that you can choose from a whatever basket and say, okay, for my particular circumstance, this set of benefits makes the most sense. So those are two which perhaps we are seeing in many organizations. Where do you think the next big breakthrough in personalization of human resources will come from?
The biggest one will be in careers, Shalini. And I think the biggest one is in careers because anywhere in the world we are in, and it could be a conversation happening in India or in more developed markets like Europe or Americas. What people are really worried about, the biggest feedback is about careers. How do I enable growth for myself? And the reason that's important is because that translates to everything else. If I'm growing in my career, it relates to the satisfaction I get at work. It relates to the fact that I have more challenging assignments. It contributes to the financial well-being, and it contributes to what I can do a lot more in my life. Um, I think the biggest unlock and the real opportunity is in careers because traditionally we have focused either on creating ladders across the organization and saying this is how you grow, or we have focused a lot on saying, continue to build skills and you will grow. So either tell people that you're doing well, we will grow you, you move from one role to the other, or the fact that you need to continue to learn, and as you become broader or deeper, you will grow in the organization. Unfortunately, that's not going to be real because many people in future are not even looking for permanent jobs. They're looking for experiences and unique experiences which will help them to feel fulfilled and grow and get all other things which they're looking for in life. How do you make that happen? We don't have the answers, but that's the biggest unlock where a lot of other things, which is either about benefits or about learning opportunities, actually converge and come together. If one can solve for that, one can solve for a significant level of employee engagement and satisfaction. What one can solve for business outcomes, because if that's going to happen, employees are excited to result in business success. So I would say careers. A lot of other things are more easy in nature, and have already moved a lot. But the real opportunity is in careers.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think it will be very exciting to see some of that get unlocked, because I know that we've moved to the extent of course, for years there've been internal job posts, and in some systems pop-ups with those internal job posts if you meet a certain set of criteria. Many organizations have had individual skill mapping fed into the system, so many of the building blocks have been there, but we've been nowhere near what is possible in terms of recognizing that individual's uniqueness beyond whether they've checked 5 skills and are at so we've sort of done it very coarsely, shall I say, at this point in time, and the opportunity of understanding what this individual is really seeking, looking for, aspiring for, and connecting that with possibilities. I think that'll be a very, very exciting move within organizations. Personally, look forward to that. David asks, how would you spot disengagement in the virtual space? Any idea? How would you spot disengagement? We're all working virtually in 2020, right? Do you think managing employee experience in 2020 has been a particular challenge?
It has been a challenge, Shalini. I'll be lying if I say it has not been, but I think it can be done. And we all have learned. One of the things which I learned along the journey in the last few months is just creating a little bit of space to have those coffee conversations, which we have at work otherwise, which actually helps us understand the organization and challenges a lot more. Today, and we all use different tools and technologies, right? Microsoft Teams or Zoom, to have our meetings. We have got one meeting after the other, structured meetings, and so focused on the agenda because we have to close those discussions that we ended up not leaving space for that informal connect and coffee conversation, which was very powerful for us to understand employees. And I think there's something which we as an organization realized, and a lot of my peers talk about it. Just creating that space for informal connect and a conversation where you just say, so how are you doing? And build that conversation on individual versus talking about a task, a project, or work which needs to be done can help immensely. Obviously, there are many other tools, as in I would really say there are tools like chatbots who can connect and so on. But unless we are changing fundamentally our mindset, tools can enable, they can't solve the problem. And the mindset needs to be that, yes, I need to understand what's going on. I need to build that connect. And that can be done in many different ways.
That's a nice answer. Shabnam asks, what metrics or KPIs can companies use to measure personalization efforts?
So, Shabnam, I'll have a controversial answer. My belief is that if we start looking at everything with metrics and KPIs, as organizations, we will fundamentally move away from what we are here for. And I'll just share a story. As in, every time I looked at Steve Jobs and his books and what he did and why I felt he was a very powerful leader, any solution he created, whether it was iTunes or iPhone or it was iPads, the results came, there was significant business growth. But he did not start by saying that I want to grow my company 2x or XYZ. He did not start his entire effort by saying, my customers articulated this need, and guess what? I'm solving for that need. When we start measuring every effort and start putting metrics to everything we are doing in the organization, we leave the opportunity of having strong beliefs which translate into success in the organization. One definitely needs to measure the outcomes in the business, right? So what results are coming, how well we are doing or not, how engaged our employees are. But I would strongly discourage for us to start putting metrics for personalization. Metrics would be business performance, employee engagement, how well people are doing, not the level of personalization we are introducing.
This is a question which always divides people on, the importance of metrics and KPIs across anything. You always have one diehard camp who believes very strongly that what you can't measure and track will not happen. And then there are many others who believe that, but when you just do that, you tend to game a system and you lose the spirit. So focus on the spirit and everything else follows. And we see this across pretty much everything, right? Whether you're talking about diversity and inclusion, whether you're talking about, the way careers move, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just so interesting that across almost, I think, multiple domains, there is this debate on whether to use metrics or not. And of course, there's strong arguments, I would say, at both ends of the spectrum. Arif, I realize we're at the hour, but this was such a fascinating conversation. Frankly, I could just go on and on, trying to have this, thought experiment with you on what the future is going to be like. It does seem clear that the future is going to look very different, both for employees, but also equally organizations and human resource systems. So while the personalization of employee experience, one hopes, will be liberating, more engaging for individual employees, because they have a greater opportunity for, to find space being who they are and having their own unique signature of, contribution, needs, aspirations, etc. It means huge changes in the way organizations think about themselves. Changes right from, what we spoke about in the early part of the conversation of, thinking of co-creation rather than top-down introduce systems with change management, to follow it. So the, co-creation of systems, deep dive into how is a particular system being experienced. So what is the experience in that? And that requires a deep degree of empathy and almost conscious choice not to bracket everybody as being the same, but to look at the differences and work with those differences, hopefully even celebrate those differences in some way through this journey of personalization. So it's really interesting conversation. Want to thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. For those of you who are listening in, I do want to mention that we do understand that the future is going to look very, very different, and therefore the skills which HR leaders of tomorrow are going to need are going to be very, very different. So also keep watching this space, because we're going to have lots of conversations around some of these future trends across the month of December. And early next year, we're also launching a program for future HR leaders, which integrates some of this with the kind of HR systems that people are currently working in. So thank you so much, Arif.
Thank you, Shalini, for having me here. It's been a true pleasure. And I just want to leave with one last message for the audience. Treat employees as people. If we treat employees as people, we will solve for the real needs versus treating employees differently than people.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Thanks, Arif. Thank you.
Thank you, Shalini. Thank you for the opportunity.
So I hope you all really enjoyed that conversation. I thought Arif was absolutely brilliant. I always have felt he's a very smart thinker and was very happy when he agreed to join us in this conversation today. I think his final words about treating employees as people has always been true, but it's going to be truer from here on, because we're going to have the kinds of tools needed to be able to do so more rigorously and perhaps more consistently in creating a great employee experience. Now, if you liked this conversation, please formally like it, comment, and do reshare on your LinkedIn profile if you think that others would benefit from hearing some of these ideas. And next week, we're going to speak about the gig economy and what it will take to be a successful player in this economy. And we're going to look at the Uber experience. Our guest is Manvi Baveja, who's joining us as the head of organizational development of Uber. And she's going to speak about what it takes, to create the kind of successful experiment that Uber has. So stay tuned and do join us. With that, have a great rest of the weekend. Thank you.